Peter's from the MAR project, and they're going to give us a 3-year technical report summary. So, Peter, Brett, I'll hand over to you and talk us through it, please.
Thank you, Mayor Neil. Thank you very much, people, for the opportunity to present today. Very much appreciated from our group. Before I start, I'd like to make mention of the previous Mayor, Donna. Her input into the HH Wet Trust was very valuable and recognised and very good. So, yeah, I'd like to acknowledge that. I'd also like to acknowledge the council contribution of the $125,000. That will be used for a new site on Timaru Track beside the Ashburton, near the Ashburton River, exclusively to protect the Tynwald drinking water supplies. We feel that's a very important part of our job to do. So yeah, that money will be, most of that money will be used on the site on Timaru Track beside the Ashburton River. Our Year 3 report, which Brent will highlight, is just finished its peer review, internal and external peer review process. What Brett has here is highlights of that report, so I'll hand over to Brett to share that with you, please.
Thank you, Peter, and kia ora. We've given you a few slides with lots of words on them, not because we will dwell on all of those words today, just so that you have them for future reference as you choose. So the second page you'll have in front of you, the Chairman's forward, has lots of words on it, and hopefully we will cover the key parts of this as we go through. And as I work through the rest of the slides, please stop me at any time with questions, as always. I expect you're all well aware of this slide. Now down in the bottom left-hand corner, this was the plan change 2 grand plan, if you like. They also called it the three-legged stool. To manage nutrients on farm, manage abstraction irrigated area, and manage aquifer recharge as all key components. And what we have learnt to date is that these 3 components remain key, that we will not achieve the plan change 2 goals without all of these 3 components doing their job, at least as well as has been hoped for. So the MAR component of that is on the right-hand side of the slide, and they're not specifically prioritised, but at different times they can be prioritised, and drinking water is specifically at the top of the list at the moment. I'm sure you all know why. This area, this catchment, has some pretty significant challenges that have occurred over a long period of time and will take a long time to fix. But what we are seeing with the MAR is if we can get the water in the right place at the right time down catchment, we can intercept some of the plume, and we can assist with drinking water supplies. As Peter's just said, for Tynwald, which will now have 3 sites aimed at it. The pilot site, site number 3 just to the north, and then this long lateral, so it's the end of the old Valletta scheme bywash race that we're looking to use. So that's as much as we can throw at the Tynwald plume at the moment. In terms of the water in the ground, from your 500 litres per second, which is approximately 12 million cubic metres per year, a little bit more than that. First year we were able to recharge just under 2.5 million cubic metres, second year just under 2, and this year we've been able to increase that to 5.5 million cubic metres, largely because we've introduced 11 more sites. And so when the water is available, and when the water is not like it looks at the moment coming out of the rangitata, And the issue with that water, obviously, is that it will clog up our sites very, very quickly when it's high in turbidity. So we've actually been off for the last month just with the high turbidity water. But when it clears again, we have a lot more sites that we can get going, so we can catch up a lot quicker than previously. The long-term goal is the goal set by the previous governance group based on Plan Change 2. That's what the Plan Change 2 assessments thought would be necessary to achieve the MAR component. So we're a wee way off that at the moment, as you can see. In terms of the pilot site, the upgrades to the site, the cleaning of the site have had an effect, along with changing our operational regime slightly. When there is more depth of water in the pond, it's heavier and it pushes the water down faster. So we've seen that along with this additional deep soakage system and cleaning the basin of the pond to have about a 30% increase in recharge rate, which is very promising. Up at the Hiko Hines River Project site, which I know many of you have been to, that has been our most consistent performer, if you like, being directly connected to the RDR. It's not subject to the restrictions that we have through the irrigation schemes, and it's consistently able to recharge what we hoped, which is around about 200 litres a second. But even 200 litres a second in a down gradient aquifer is a small amount of water, and so a river fresh of 4 or 5 cubics or 50 or 70 cubics makes a much bigger impression on the aquifer than our small amount of water. But I'll show you that we can see and measure the change when we've got low flows coming down the river, and we are assisting with keeping groundwater levels, even with a small amount. The test sites, we trialled a few different ideas. We have given up on stock water race supply. Our consent conditions say that we need to shut down with certain E. coli counts, and we weren't able to manage the E. coli counts sufficiently off the stock water races. We have had and continue to have E. coli challenges through the irrigation system, but that's we have only seen that to be due to bird life in some of the large irrigation storage ponds, and particularly just prior to duck shooting season. Angus.
Brent, are you suggesting 5 paragraphs ago in the comment you've just made, without actually saying it, have you suggested it might be better to leave some water, the stock water, in the river so it pressurises the river to provide more recharge?
In the Rangitata River, do you mean? Oh, okay. So we're not taking any water from the Ashburton River at all. The water's coming from the Rangitata River via the RDR through the irrigation.
The stock water for that area comes from where? And the stock water races that have the high E. coli, where do they come from in this area?
Probably out of the Ashburton River, but we were using stock water races as conduits, not as sources.
So you're not using what can be any Ashburton stock water, any Ashburton River stock water.
Any Ashburton stock water.
Mr. Mayor, later on, could we hear from Mr. McCann what stock water takes on the south side of the Ashburton still operating, please?
We can try. He has left, but we could try to get that.
All right. No problem. So what we have found to be successful is connecting these small sites to an irrigation pond, and so any sediment coming through can settle out. We can see whether the birds are there or not, and whether they're causing an issue, and then we're looking for reasonably short open races so that we minimise any potential for additional E. coli to get into the system. And so just noting the final sentence down there, which I'll show you later, is that we purposefully built these small to begin with as a test site to understand, so that it wasn't a big footprint, wasn't a big cost, and we have found that the measurable impact is reasonably small, as we would expect down gradient. Again, it's a 3 metre hole with maybe 20 litres a second going in a very large aquifer, so we can't expect to have a big impression with that. But we have found where the water travels better, where the water recharges better, and so now we're looking to make those larger. And as Peter just said, our new consents for the new site up above Tynwald and for making these larger came through yesterday afternoon. So we're all consented and ready to go as follow-up to your funding, which is brilliant.
We're just on the consents. What consents are they for?
So we currently have take consents take consent at the top end, which is a subservient consent to your stock water consent. And we have 3 separate sets of discharge consents, one for the pilot site, one for the near river recharge site, and a third one for all the test sites. So what we have done is we have changed the conditions of the test site discharge consent to bring in more sites to allow more water into current sites, and also this new lateral race design.
And what length is the consents for, of time?
They're all running approximately to February 2021 at the moment. So in my last slide, you will see one of the jobs of the next for the next year is to start work on long-term consenting, because these are trial consents at the moment, and the long-term consenting process needs to be even more rigorous, if you like, than the current process. Okay, so what have we learnt? So the pilot site is where we have spent the most money and effort on monitoring, by digging a bunch of monitoring sites, it's a little bit difficult to see with the lights on, isn't it? Is it easier on your paper? Is it okay? Okay. So lots of wells monitored, some monthly, one with our continuous nitrate tracker in it, and some dug specifically for this. So we have, and I'll point to the one behind some of you. So this is our pilot. Maybe I can get them both. Pilot site up the top. The expected direction of water is the purple area down here. So this is what we saw in year number 1. In year number 2, we think we saw some impact further down gradient, and in year 3 we're seeing similar results here, but you can see by the map that there are very few wells in here, because this is where we get spring emergence. And so what we've started doing, and I'll show you that in a minute, is started monitoring the springs further down, but they're a little bit too far away to be seeing that at the moment. We've colour coded them, and the colours on here, the green represents the green here, the yellow, we don't have any yellows in this one, and the red also represents the red here to make it a little bit easier to read. We have a really clear distinction up close to the pilot site between the bores that are clearly influenced by the clean water going in, because they have very low nitrate concentrations, less than 4, versus the one which is off to the side, which has much higher concentration of nitrate, around 15. So we can confidently say that this is up gradient nitrate coming down, which hasn't been intercepted by the clean water. this has been intercepted by the clean water closely and is being clearly influenced by it.
Question, Stuart?
These wells were originally up here, were they, before we started?
Yes.
You haven't got that part that shows how much they've come down since you started the MAR project, isn't it?
Correct. It was around 12 from memory, and then a very quick drop down to 4. And as you can see, with some of them, we're very close to 0, very close to the detectable limit with some of them, because that's the concentration of the Rangitata River water coming through. So that suggests that there's very little other groundwater getting into these wells, if that makes sense. So that's the easy one. Then as we get further down, the picture becomes a little more murky, and we were expecting this. And if I just take you to the diagram on the left, we're getting down into this area now, and if you can see the little blue lines, that's the groundwater flow direction. So we've got this old paleo channel, this old underground river channel here, but then we have groundwater coming at it from both sides. And so by the time we get down here, we're expecting to have quite mixed water. The clean water coming straight down, and then the higher nutrient water coming from both sides. So what we can see here is that the ones that are in green through here are sitting between 7 and even going up to 15, but coming down. And so they are showing some influence from the clean water, but clearly not as much as the wells much closer to the pilot site, because they are getting blended. But we do have some bores that are not going up and down. So these ones are coming down when we've got so this is the recharge water coming in, and that's the right-hand axis. So we're talking 100 litres a second. For a long period of time, we're seeing the nitrate concentrations come down here. We're not seeing it come down here, and we're not seeing it come down here. So that's how we are concluding that the green ones, the green bores, are influenced. The yellow bore is perhaps slightly influenced, but not much, and the red one is not influenced.
Are all these bores down what you're monitoring, are they all at the same depth, or are they all kind of different depths?
They're different depths. Some of them are in the most shallow aquifer up by the pilot site, and then they go down a little bit deeper after that. We're not expecting to influence groundwater at great depth here, because we're actually in the part of the aquifer where the groundwater is starting to come back up again. So we won't be able to go against that grain. So moving right down near, much closer to State Highway 1 now. So this is the bottom, the lowest set of bores down here. And we can see, again, some decreasing here, a very dramatic decrease here in this bore here, which is 3146. So that's possibly the beginning of the cleaner water reaching it. It could be due to something else. We're not seeing any real effect here, but we are seeing a lower than average nitrate concentration from the yellow bore 1468. And the red one down here, this is one of your highest groundwater nitrate concentrations in the district, being at over 20 milligrams per litre. So we're more than twice the drinking water limit in that bore. And so we are specifically targeting, so our site 3 is about here, and then our lateral race is here. So what we've done is we've back traced from the groundwater flow direction, and we will be targeting as much clean water as we can down into this area, which is the highest nitrate area. Does that make sense? Great. Okay, so as I said before, we're also interested in seeing whether way down in the springs and in the lowland drains, we will be able to have a measurable effect on nitrate concentration as well as flows. So we've moved our continuous nitrate groundwater monitoring down to this bore down here, down by the school, which school? Long Beach School. So that's where we've moved it into. We've had a lot of trouble with the bore. This is called the non-nitrate, and this is essentially turbidity in the bore, which is not allowing us to see the nitrate, or not allowing the sensor to see the nitrate. And it's finally came clean in April of this year. And if we zoom across to the left, we can see that it's showing about 13 milligrams per litre, and not much change. That is about the same concentration as we have measured in, as we're measuring in the lowland drains, and that's what we would expect the groundwater feeding the lowland drains to be around about the same concentration. So we will continue to monitor this to see whether we are able to achieve a decline there in the future. You may see that there was a significant decline here in February of this year. Can anyone remember February of this year and what the drains were doing? They were going dry, yes. And obviously a very dry drain has no nitrate in it. And we're seeing that a nearly dry drain, also the nitrate's not concentrating there. It's dropping off, at least in the way that it was measured. So that's not any effect from this project. Up to the top of the catchment, for anyone that hasn't been, this Mayfield's just hidden down here. This is a Rangitata, a wee way down, I should say. Rangitata diversion race flowing through here. Doesn't look this colour at the moment, still looks very brown, unfortunately. So we connect through to an infiltration race that runs all the way around here to a number of infiltration basins, with another little infiltration up the top here. Our lizard habitat sits up here, and we have a wetland habitat which will soon become mudfish habitat as soon as we get the DOC permission through as well. So it's been assessed as being perfect for mudfish habitat, which is great news. Now we just need to get the DOC permission through. So the monitoring is mostly about just checking the up gradient flow. So that's the yellow one. The down gradient flow in the river, which is the black one. The blue is what we're putting into the ground here, and then what we're interested in is how much water is showing up at the Lower Downs Bridge, and how much water is actually disappearing to groundwater and not showing up again. So we can see that where there is a difference between the two graphs. So here's the first one, so we can see that there's only about 30 litres a second in the river, up gradient, and that increases to about 130 down here, and at the same time we're putting 150 in. So it's pretty simple maths to be able to calculate what is leaching through or recharging through the shallow aquifer and heading back to the river versus what is going into groundwater and staying in groundwater. So we see it again down here and down here, and even in some of the higher flows we're able to measure the difference. So that tells us which direction the water is likely to be moving. So the water going to groundwater will be heading more towards your community supply bore, and this was one of the reasons for putting the site up here, so that we can assist this bore in the next drought. And the water that stays in the river channel generally recharges groundwater in this reach here, which normally runs dry by the time it gets down to the confluence. So then the water will essentially flow down in this direction. So we have some bores already. I've chosen the one closest to the river, so a shallow bore close to the river. And what we have in grey is the groundwater level. In blue we have the river flow, and the little bit in green is our recharge flow, what we're putting in. So what we can see, as I mentioned before, is that the groundwater level changes very quickly in response to decent freshers coming down the river. When there is almost no water in the river and we have some flow, some recharge flow coming in, we're able to maintain groundwater level close to. When there is no recharge coming in and the flow is declining, we're seeing a dropping groundwater level. And so that's a really good sign. It means when we're on an extended drought with extended low flows or no flows in that river, that hopefully we won't see it was a 25 or 30 metre drop in this bore last time that caused it to run dry. So if we're seeing this sort of an effect close to the river, we'll see less of an effect here, but hopefully we'll be able to stave off the big groundwater declines. We have also installed some piezometers, some monitoring wells on the true left, because we think some water is also heading in this direction too. This is our summary of what we've learned from our test sites, and you'll see the E. coli issue coming up, the clogging, so that's when sediment's getting in, and again connecting to a race means we're more liable to see sediment getting in and clogging, whereas connecting to an irrigation pond, that's much less likely. And we also have some infrastructure limitations, so piping limitations, and those are the most solvable ones. With some money we can put on some larger pipes generally, and be able to increase flow to those sites. So the colour coding is really just the traffic light system of green being a really positive result, yellow being okay, and red being not what we'd hoped for. So we've had a look at the opportunities and the things that we need to change based on this. Just a couple of, or one, I think, site of specific example. We have a continuous groundwater nitrate monitor in this bore down here, and so this was one of the reasons for putting this site here. This is at the Slees, those of you that know the Slees. So coming off their pond now, one of their ponds here. So it's a reasonably complicated picture. The purple is the nitrate concentration, and so we go across here for the nitrate concentration, so it's varying between sort of 14 and 18, 17, 18. The red is the groundwater levels. You'll see the groundwater level declining with not much rain at all happening, and then suddenly increasing with a decent rainfall as we expect. And then this is our short test period. So that's the orange, this is the flow, and again you go across to the right axis, so we're looking at between 5 and 20 litres a second going in. And we did see a drop in nitrate after putting some water in, and we did see an increase in nitrate after stopping that flow. We also saw the groundwater levels flattening out. So these are all what we are expecting to see. We don't have any other reasons for any other land use change or anything else to suspect as having an influence. So that gives us some confidence. Finally, our next step, so this is our 2 to 3 year plan. We clearly need to find some more water to be able to make a more significant impression on the aquifer, and the Trust and other parties have been working very hard at this for a long time, and you've probably heard us say this before, and day by day, week by week, it gets closer and closer, I think, so we're confident we'll get there. We're not going to give up on that one. The optimisation of the sites is just, are they in the right place? Are they the right size? Have they got the right infrastructure feeding them? How can they be at their best? We are not impacting all parts of the catchment yet, and so we need to prioritise where the next sites go. and we also have some more concepts that we need to have a look at, particularly how can we get water into the deeper part of the aquifer further up the plains, because we know the nutrients in the post coming through the deeper groundwater system. We've seen the monitoring of the deep groundwater come up at a pretty alarming rate, and so we need to figure out how we can get some clean water down in there faster than it would happen naturally. We also need to check the monitoring network right across the whole catchment, make sure that that the monitoring's in the right place, again, that it's fit for purpose at the right depths as well. And as I mentioned at the beginning, some long-term consents are required for this project to deliver what the plan change asked it to deliver. So we need some smart consenting minds and technical minds to work with us on that too.
Thanks very much, Brett. That's a good overview of what you've been up to in the last 3 years, which is excellent, getting good results. There's a couple of questions there. Actually, Angus had a question early on. Have we got the answer to that there? Neil or Dave, is it?
Dave's here if you want to ask anything on
Dave,
stock
did you
water.
want, Angus, just want to repeat the question, please?
Well, might be 2 or 3, depends on the answer to the first one, Mr Mayor. Does the Ashburton District Council have any stock water race takes on the south side of the Ashburton River system?
Yes, we do, the brothers.
Does the race system that delivers that stock water, does the MAR use any of that to just transport their MAR water in?
That I can't answer directly, but I was under the impression it actually came from the Klondike one through the RDR.
Okay. What happens to any of the stock water races that are no longer continue to flow through farms that have their own supply? Like, what happens at the end of the race system?
At the end of a race system, they go into a soak hole or back into the Ashburton River.
Mr Mayor, could I please ask a question of Brett?
Yes.
Could you please answer the question again, why you're not using stock water races for your MAR, stock water race water for your MAR experiments, for your MAR scheme?
So our consent requirements require us to monitor for E. coli on a weekly basis, and monthly from the RDR, weekly, and require us to stop supplying our site when the E. coli reaches a certain level. And we have found so what I think we are doing, it is Rangitata water from the Klondike going through the Mayfield Hind irrigation system, but we have been using sections of stock water race, some of it not being used for stock water delivery, I think, on the Mayfield Hinds side, to deliver water from a turnout essentially to a pond, and we have had issues managing sediment and E. coli in that, so we've decided that we will focus on our supply directly from the irrigation ponds. Having said that, there are some lateral irrigation races from the old Mayfield Hinds and Valletta systems, which are now no longer required, sections of those, and we are actively looking at them, including what we're calling Site 2 now, the Timaru Track Road, to see if we can use the race as a recharge area without having the E. coli issues. So we haven't given up on that idea, because the lateral race is a really good way of getting water in the ground. We just need to be able to manage the quality of the water.
If one was a layman, Brett, could one assume that the Ashburton District Council stock water system is contributing to the dirty groundwater? In light of the answer that our stock water races, you said they're dirty, we've heard from our staff member that we drop them into the ground through boulder holes. So as a layman, I have to say, well, we are delivering dirty water to the groundwater, are we not?
Possibly, possibly not, but the volumes are considerably different. What your disused stock water is going in is probably maybe a litre a second or half a litre a second. The sites that we're running on the Mar are 30 to up to 50 litres a second. And what Brent, the two sites that we discontinued because of the E. coli challenges, they were possibly maybe the races went through alongside farms that were there might have been cattle put in when they were dry. The races were dry, and then water came down. That, I think, was the problem.
Supplementary?
Mr Mayor, can I thank you, make a comment, can I thank for clearing up that matter that we have no stock water takes on the south side of the Ashburton River system?
No, we do have one. We do. The brothers.
That we contribute.
Oh, that.
Yeah, and the one thing I would like us to consider in the annual plan and 10-year plan coming up, that we look at cleaning up our own act with our stock water, which is obviously contributing. It might only be in a small way, but it is a contributing factor.
Correct, and we're probably doing that through the Water Race Advisory Group, is it, Stuart? We've got that group running, which will probably address that as well, so it is being looked at.
Can I further add to Councillor Mackay's comments? At our pilot site, there's extensive monitoring being carried out in that for the 3 years. At times, there's readings of E. coli of 200 to 300. There's a monitoring bore approximately 50 metres away from that site. At no time in the operations has there been any E. coli recorded in that bore.
It's heartening. Just looking at the first bullet point up there is increased mass supply, and obviously what you've done is great, it's showing good results, but you want to expand it, so you're going to need some more water. We have that. Do you want to make a request to us for some more on the trial basis? Is that what you're sort of asking, or would like to ask?
That request will be coming very shortly on through our committee. We have struggled last winter with infrastructure constraints. The Valletta pipeline system was in maintenance for 5 months, which is seriously impacted on our ability to put water in the ground on the north side of the Hines River. And as Brent mentioned, part of the ongoing is to get some more sites up by the RDR where the there won't be the constraints of supply as we're suffering from there.
So you had a goal of 125 million cubes to go in. Obviously, if you do the numbers backwards, it comes up with so many litres per second. So that's possibly what you would want to request to meet that target at the other end.
Yeah, and some of that we hope to secure some of that water from District Council. There'll be some of that water will have to be secured from that now goes through Highbank Power Station in the off season.
Yep. So we await the request.
We have no intention of asking for more consented water out of the Rangatata River.
Right. Okay. Councillor Lovett?
I was just going to ask, like, the whole system's designed to flush out the nitrogen underground. You're starting at the top of the system, flushing it down, like us living down on the coast. Are we in danger of being overloaded down there? Or how fast does the system empty out to the sea? Because are we going to have to be prepared for higher nitrates farming with that? Which is not our fault, it's all been dumped on us from
Councillor Lovett,
above.
you might like to say, will the people down by the coast be affected rather than yourself?
Will the people down by the coast be affected, yes.
I understand the question. And so what we have seen thus far with the monitoring is that there isn't this front of increased concentration water, if you like, that the clean water coming through is mixing and blending with water and is moving groundwater through the system, but it's not concentrating that groundwater as it moves through the system. So we are seeing that the natural groundwater coming down the catchment towards you, both the deep and the shallow groundwater, is increasing in concentration and quite quickly. So yes, you are right to have a concern about that, but what we have seen from the MAR monitoring is that there isn't a concentrated front. So the MAR water itself will actually be, I'm not going to use the word diluting because it's not quite technically correct, but it's similar to that effect. So we're confident that this will not increase your challenge, but it will decrease your concentrations in the long term.
Okay, no, I was just worried because we've all got a farm within constraints, and is it going to alter what we can farm because of what's going through the system?
Sorry, there is one more part to this. The other thing, and there is an Environment Canterbury report just out now which had a good look at the nitrate in the groundwater and the sources of the nitrate and the ages of it. And one of the recommendations of that, very clear recommendations, is that everybody taking groundwater for irrigation in the lower catchment, please check your nitrate concentration. Please include that in all your on-farm nutrient management decisions, because it's free nitrogen coming through. And by this I mean in overseer and in nutrient budgets. It's free nitrogen coming through, but what they have found in the bores is recirculated nitrogen. In other words, nitrogen that's been taken up from the groundwater, poured on the ground, and has gone back down through to the groundwater system again, which means that there was too much nutrients already in the system. So that's the other part of it, and if that can happen, that in itself will make a significant improvement to the quality of your groundwater, if that makes sense.
Plus a cost saving.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it does make sense. So if no further questions, Peter, Brett, thanks very much for coming in and sharing those results with us. We look forward to you coming in next time, and we look forward to a request for some water for the Hind zone, which will help meet the targets of Plan Change 2, which we all want to adhere to. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the support.
Thank you, Peter. So thank you, councillors. That is the end of our council meeting today. I'll declare the meeting closed, and thank you for your attendance. And have a very Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year. And yeah, we'll see you. Have a good break, and see you next year. Yeah, yeah. Okay.